Every once in a while, a landmark game releases and it becomes my hyperfixation game for the next couple months. Chances are, when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about playing it or just talking about the game any chance that I get. Well, for me, right now, Persona 3 Reload is that game. And I totally knew this was going to happen. So much so that I rushed through all the games that Santa brought just to make sure that I had a clear release schedule for when this one arrived. Now, this is not my first foray into Persona 3. My first run through the game was in 2007, actually, when it released for the PlayStation 2, followed by the enhanced re-release Persona 3 FES in 2008, which added additional gameplay features and a beefy new epilogue story called The Answer, that, as a side note, will actually be coming to Reload in September of this year, and a third time through with Persona 3 Portable in 2010 for the PSP. Now, this iteration was scaled back a little bit just to account for the difference in performance and hardware. This reduced overworld exploration to a movable circle on static screens of the game's various locations, and it also removed all of the anime cutscenes. Now, this version was not as widely known for what it removed, but actually for what it added. Most notably, this port finally gave players full control of the party members' actions in battle, in addition to the option of playing as a female protagonist, which changes many aspects of the overall experience. Now, this takes us to Persona 3 Reload, which released just a few weeks back on February 2nd. I remember hearing a lot of chatter online about this game for quite a while, and then finally some random leaked gameplay footage of Yukari hit the internet, and it had everybody scrambling trying to disprove its authenticity. Well, as it turns out, it was 100% legit because, well, we have the game right here. So please, allow me to gush and talk about this game and everything that I think it just does so incredibly well. I can't even begin to explain how beautifully polished and what an overall joy this game is to play. But as a remake of an almost 20-year-old game, I guess the most appropriate place to start is with the visual overhaul that this game received. The original was obviously on the PlayStation 2 and had a much more simplistic graphical style. Reload was completely reconstructed from the ground up. Every model, shader, asset, animation is all brand new, and I just can't overstate what a feast for the eyes this game is. Persona 3 has a much more mature and darker story than Persona 4 and Persona 5, and that was reflected in the original game's more muted, dark color scheme. On the flip side, Reload's colors feel ultra bright, rich, and saturated, though it still manages to capture that gloomy atmosphere in Tartarus, which has also received a very welcome overhaul, but more on that later. I was really taken by just how much detail there is. Like, look at how every electronic item in the dorm has an actual power cord leading to an actual outlet. It's a super small detail, but this kind of blew my mind. And look at how much more lifelike your teammates are when they're relaxing. Junpei's usually slurping down some noodles, Mitsuru is almost always reading, Fuka is typing nothing on her laptop, and Yukari is typically painting her nails or... Wait, is that a cigarette? No, never mind, she's just munching on some Pocky. Anyway, I just love how these little animations add just a teeny bit more insight into the various personalities of these beloved characters, and it really just makes them feel a lot more lifelike. Speaking of which, all of the character portraits used next to the dialogue boxes have gotten a huge facelift too. The intricate shading and overall redesigns of these images make them not only look more attractive, but also just more like actual human beings. Plus, they move their mouths and blink too, which is not only cute, but really helps to make these scenes feel less static. I think the environmental effects are much more dynamic and impressive too. If you walk under the recessed lighting in Iwatodai dorm, you can clearly see the light hitting the protagonist's head. Or at Gekkokan High, the reflections in the glass windows and realistic shadows as golden hour arrives. The lighting and environments as a whole feel so much more true to life with these details, despite having that signature anime style. It's made me really want to explore every nook and cranny of Tatsumi Port Island that much more, and it just feels all the more immersive for it. I personally really like to zoom in behind the protagonist when it's available and just take in his surroundings within these scenic locales. Plus, they've added a sprint button, so now you can zoom around them too, and that just feels great. Speaking of impressive detail, I think it's finally time that we address the elephant in the room. My God, these menus are just so damn good. I think narratively and thematically speaking, the underwater aesthetic of the menus and interface are a rather fitting choice for a number of reasons, but maybe it's just because Persona 3's color is blue, I don't know. Either way, I think we can all agree that Atlus simply did not have to go this hard. These animations and use of color are just so incredibly slick and clean. I remember during the first hour or so of my playthrough, I was just mashing the triangle button in awe because I could not get enough of that syncing animation. And honestly, I still can't. Look at how the screen even has a few little water droplets splashing out as you close the menu. It's all so good. I know Persona 5 has kind of trademarked that flashy, stylish, and masterfully designed menu style, but Persona 3 Reload certainly gives those a run for its money. At least in my opinion. Now, since we're talking about the presentation, we have to talk about the game's soundtrack. Almost all of these tunes were in the original game, but some are reworked, and all are certified bangers. First off, the game makes an incredible first impression by blessing your ears with Full Moon, Full Life, along with the game's opening cinematic. I can't lie, on more than a few occasions, I've just closed my game completely and rebooted it so I can listen to the song and watch the cinematic again. And it's so effective because it truly captures that feeling of going on a long and emotional journey. Don't even get me started on Color Your Night, the game's nighttime theme when exploring the city. Once you leave the dorm, you honestly should just put the controller down and listen to it fully through. It's incredibly catchy, kind of jazzy, and will have you bobbing your head, no doubt. It perfectly conveys that feeling of a night on the town with endless possibilities. The game's new battle theme, It's Going Down Now, is just as unbelievable. It's an in-your-face fusion of rock, jazz, and hip-hop, and it's just another incentive to get the jump on your enemies and hop into a battle. Also, why does the after-school theme make me feel like I'm in a nightclub? The Atlus sound team might as well have been Gordon Ramsay because they just cooked incredibly hard here. And you can bet your butt that I already pre-ordered that vinyl from IM8-Bit, and you should probably do the same. It's that good. The game also introduced a brand new voice cast, which is always worrying, but I'm really pleased to say that a majority of them absolutely nailed it and were incredibly well cast. Personally, I think Zeno Robinson as Junpei or Allegra Clark as Mitsuru are my favorite performances. They really walk this line of sounding incredibly faithful and familiar to the original cast while also putting their own spin on the role. Plus, if you listen close enough, you might just hear the original cast making cameo appearances as side characters. Thankfully, the voice acting is great because there is a lot more of it this time around. All of the social link events are fully voiced in this version, which really helps to bring these side stories to life. I think Shelby Young as Yuko also deserves a special round of applause. I just think she did an amazing job with making that character so likable and grounded. Now, if all of that weren't great enough, the gameplay here is improved in every feasible way. I mentioned earlier, one of the most drastic changes for me is the design of Tartarus. In previous iterations of Persona 3, it was sort of a monotonous grind getting to the top. There are 264 floors split into multiple blocks, but each one kind of looked and functioned almost exactly the same. Didn't help that the background music also never changed. Here, Atlus has done a number of things to alleviate that issue. First, party members now will have occasional banter as you explore.
Hey Yucatan, be sure to like this video and subscribe. Gregosaurus is the best, right Sonata-san?
In all seriousness though, these quirky interactions just help to further develop and flesh out these characters. On top of pointing out chests and shadows, they might just have a really grounded conversation about Junpei being tired from gaming all night, or how Fuka lent Yukari her gym uniform. This is something that again is borrowed from Persona 5, but really works to great effect here. Additionally, each block now has more of a distinct look and feel to it. This drastically changes how you'll navigate each floor, and it really aids in keeping things fresh when you're scaling this immense tower. Some of the designs and lighting effects are really neat too. It makes for a much more chilling and haunting atmosphere. Because each block now feels like it truly has its own identity, they more closely resemble the individual dungeons that were themed in both Persona 4 and Persona 5. Tartarus also just feels much more interactive with numerous additions to pique your interest. Like these objects that when broken have a chance of dropping various materials or consumable items. It's not game-changing by any means, but it sure does feel satisfying to smash these as you dungeon crawl. Monad doors are another new addition that offer a challenging but rewarding diversion to the player. On certain floors, Fuka will point out an ominous glowing red door. Inside, players will discover a scrambled map and much more difficult shadow encounters, the risk being justified by a wealth of EXP and some pretty rare treasure. Speaking of which, there are also tons of unlockable chests now, all of which will require one or multiple Twilight shards to open. Now this is a feature that I personally really like and I don't hear people talking about. I feel obtaining these Twilight shards really helps to tie all aspects of this game together. In addition to getting them from the breakable objects that I mentioned before, you can find them scattered around town, and most importantly, Elizabeth will provide them to you for strengthening your social links. So it's kind of this neat system where you're constantly being rewarded in all phases of the game. In thoroughly exploring your surroundings and deepening your relationships, you're gathering a better understanding of the world around you while also getting access to superior equipment in Tartarus. I don't know, I just thought this was super well done. Battle is probably the single facet of gameplay that has changed the most. Due to a few new additions, combat feels much more fluid and strategic. One of the key new elements of battle, no pun intended, are the addition of light and dark magic. In previous versions, insta-kill spells like Hama and Mudo filled that role, but it's nice to have basic spells to exploit those weaknesses too. Another feature that makes battle feel buttery smooth is Shift, a renaming of Persona 5's baton pass mechanic. When a party member hits an enemy's weakness, they're able to pass their bonus turn to another character who has access to different elements to either continue exploiting weaknesses, heal up, etc. Shifting just makes battle flow infinitely better and makes landing those satisfying all-out attacks that much easier. But by far the most impactful change is with Theor G. See that jiggly little bar near each party member's icon? When filled to max, our heroes can use a unique special move called a Theor G. These abilities have various effects, from party-wide buffs to incredibly powerful attacks. All Theor Gs cost 0 SP and come equipped with a stunning animation. The especially neat thing about this system is that each character has a different method of increasing their gauge that's specific to their personality. For example, Junpei's here is, after landing a critical hit, he becomes motivated by his own potential. And for Fuka, after analyzing an enemy, her yearning for her friend's trust grows. So you can see that their meters increase based on how their characters function in battle. But separately, it also says a bit about the character's motivations, which is such a neat touch. The Theor G system is a fantastic battle mechanic and one I can see returning in future Persona entries. P3R has finally also given the Navigator a chance to shine. Typically, the Navigator has a very hands-off role in battle, usually used as a commentator and maybe for the occasional buff. Here, Fuka not only assists in analyzing enemy resistances, but she also has usable abilities of her own. Look, she has an HP and SP meter too. I enjoy this so much. While not game-changing by any means, it made Fuka truly feel like part of the gang, and more like a playable character, which is something I really hope continues. Minus the addition of voice acting, social links are probably the most unchanged feature of Persona 3 Reload, many of which really help to hammer home those themes of death, loss, and grief that the main story focuses on. Now these definitely range in quality. For example, possibly the worst link is the Gourmet King here. This guy borderline shits his pants every time you hang out with him, and then joins a cult for some reason. Some though are actually much better than I remember. Maiko, a little girl trying to come to terms with her divorcing parents, is one of my personal favorites. It's incredibly wholesome and sweet, yet still super sad. On a more lighthearted note though, the Maya social link is pretty funny and the Leet Speak is such a relic of the game's original release time. Now unlike later titles, Persona 3 Reload only has true social links for the female members of the group. In Persona 3 Portable, when playing as the female protagonist, each male party member was also given a social link, which was great. Atlus kinda took the middle ground here. Rather than having social links for the guys, there are now special events called linked episodes that you can access on certain days. These usually tie in with what's going on in the main story and are just another way to feel closer to the cast. Plus, you're typically rewarded in stat boosts or unlockable persona fusions. I do wish that they had true social links, but I'm certainly happy with what we got here. In addition to linked episodes, you can hang out with your pals and do various activities around the dorm. Mitsuru fancies a cup of tea, whereas Aigis likes to garden, and Koromaru naturally enjoys a nice evening walk. Similar to linked episodes, these usually lead to some form of stat boost, but are an all-around great use of your time. In addition to getting the privilege of seeing updo Mitsuru, doing enough of these with each party member will unlock combat characteristics, passive abilities that further improve your teammates' capabilities in battle. So, if you watch enough boxing DVDs with Akihiko, he'll earn a characteristic that increases the effects of buffs on himself. Many of these characteristics directly tie into how you'd want to fill their Theor G gauge as well, so it's yet another feature that just feels so right. On top of all the dazzling cosmetic improvements and shiny new gameplay features that P3R has added, the game has one of the strongest and certainly most mature narratives in the Persona series. In the FES release, it was appropriately referred to as The Journey, and man, truly what a journey it takes you on. The story is chock full of dark twists and turns, but still has plenty of levity to keep the game from feeling a bit too heavy. Through tons of dialogue and impressive CGI cutscenes, you'll gradually piece together the whole picture as you make your way to the game's dramatic conclusion. By the end of it, you'll have made tons of friends and memories, conquered a gigantic tower, battled hundreds of shadows, ate more than your fair share of ramen, drank tons of coffee, sung your heart out, played games at the arcade, pet a dog, watched movies, played a crane machine. Yeah, it's safe to say that this was an adventure. And if you're anything like me, you're instantly going to be wanting more. But it looks like we'll have to wait until September to see what's next for our friends in Seas. It was a horrible pun, but let's just roll with it. Anyway, those were my thoughts on Persona 3 Reload. I really wanted to make this video because this is just a game that I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about. Now, I always thought that Persona 4 Golden would just forever be my favorite entry in the Persona series for a number of reasons. I don't know. Persona 3 Reload's kind of got me rethinking that a little bit. If anything, this has just made me want Persona 4 Golden to get the reload treatment just like this game did. But I'm totally sure that would not be happening for several years at this point. I'm pretty sure Persona 6 would be out before that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've made it all the way to this point, thank you so much for sticking around. Do you guys play P3R? Do you feel as strongly as I do? Leave a comment below and let me know. If you like this video, please subscribe, ring that notification bell. I'm going to be looking forward to making a lot more content in 2024. So thank you guys so much again for watching. Be good. Bye-bye.